Hello and welcome to the Book Marketing Simplified podcast. I'm Jenn Hanson-dePaula.
And I'm Marcus-dePaula. Today, Jenn, you wanted to talk about why strategy is important, what you think strategy actually should be for authors, and when authors should start implementing that strategy.
Yeah, a strategy really is just a game plan. And many times I talk with authors and they don't even know where to start or what they need to be doing. And so they're kind of flailing about. And that's not a good way to market a book. And so a strategy is basically kind of like a framework that you can work with to actually know what to do first and what to do next.
And so a good analogy that I like is if you're going on a trip, your strategy is your plan for how you're going to get there. You don't just blindly set out walking down the road.
Yes.
Hoping you end up at your destination. First you have to know where you're going, but then the strategy is how you're going to get there.
It's really a roadmap for you to know where you're going.
I love that visual.
Yes. So the importance of it too really helps you to not be stressed out, to not feel overwhelmed with this huge cloud of things that you quote unquote should be doing. And it really helps you to focus because there are a ton of options that are being thrown your way. You might be observing other authors doing something and you think, oh, I should do that. But if that doesn't really fit into your overall strategy or to reach your ideal readers, it's not going to have the same effect. So a strategy, having that in place first, really helps you to plan and really figure out what you need to do so you can focus and you can kind of ignore the rest of the noise that's going on.
Because otherwise you end up wasting a lot of time.
A lot of time, a lot of money. The thing that many authors assume about marketing is that it's going to take over their life or that they can't do it themselves. And I always tell authors, you are your best marketer because you know your book better than anyone and you know who you want to connect with. And so you are the best judge to do that.
And also keeping in mind that a strategy can be adjusted.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that's set in stone, but it gives you a starting point and it lets you know, okay, I have a plan and it's something that I can at least get started with.
And back to our map analogy, it gets you headed in the right direction.
Exactly.
And if you decide you need to adjust course because there's a landslide or there's a traffic accident.
A detour.
Yes.
A
That's
nice
okay.
little landmark to visit.
Right.
Yes.
So as long as you're headed in the right direction, that's what we're interested in. And if you end up having to change direction at some point, that's okay. But you do have a 5-step strategy that you like to share with your clients. Let's get into that.
Yes. So this really is set for anyone if you are doing social media or if you're not doing social media. Every book marketing strategy needs to have these 5 elements.
Okay.
So the first one is awareness. How are you going to make people aware of you and your book? I always tell authors that social media is one of the best and easiest ways to do that because you're getting your message out in one full swoop through one outlet.
And that's where your readers are spending their time online.
Exactly. People are hanging out on social media. So you need to meet your readers where they are already at. It's very hard to go someplace and jump up and down and say, come over here, look, and try to draw people someplace where they aren't naturally going, especially if they don't know who you are or aren't aware of all the value that you provide. So social media is one of the best tools. But if you want to do something that is offline, like if you want to look at your local newspapers or media, you should do some research to make sure that A, your readers are already hanging out there, that they have an attentive readership, or if they are attending a certain festival or conference or something like that, making sure not just that there's a large number of people there, but that they are the right people for you and your book.
Right.
So you can develop awareness in many different ways, but what I would recommend is focusing on at least one social media outlet. If you are capable of doing 2, that's great. But 1 or 2 social media outlets, you don't have to be everywhere. And if you do have, let's say, some media or some podcasts that you've been invited to, or if there is a festival that you want to attend, if there are 2 or 3 other things, you can add that to your awareness section as well. But I would strongly recommend 1 social media outlet and then maybe 2 or 3 other outlets as well, if you are able to get them.
So once you get the one social media system and strategy rolling, then you can branch out and try some of the other things you're talking about.
The important part to remember with this is not to spread yourself too thin.
Right.
You don't have to be everywhere in order to be seen. You just need to be in a few key places and to do them really well.
And the more you do them, the less time you'll spend moving forward, consistently posting on them. So that then opens up time for you to branch out into these other areas you're talking about.
Exactly.
All right, what's the second step?
The next step is your content. Content is any form of information that you put out there, whether that be a social media post, whether that's a podcast that you have, or a blog, or YouTube videos.
Your newsletter, or if you're a regular contributor to a magazine or an online magazine or something like that, that is content. And what content does is it shows that you know what you're talking about and that you provide the information or the entertainment that your ideal reader is looking for. It's proof. Because if you just tell someone, hey, I have a book for sale, and you don't give them any reason to check it out, it's going to really fall on deaf ears. Yeah.
So your content provides the why people should follow you, why people should pay attention.
And that why includes why your ideal reader might be interested in that, but it also is the why they should spend time
Exactly.
listening or reading or watching or viewing whatever you put out there.
Because your content really, like you said, shows your readers that when they buy your book and spend time reading it, that is going to be time well spent.
Yes. It's more than just about the money they put down to buy
Exactly.
the book. What's the third step?
The third step is a call to action. Your call to action is helping you to be intentional with everything that you're doing, with your building awareness and your content. A call to action can be telling them that the next step on your social media post is to click the link in your profile to download your free newsletter incentive. It can be to go read your latest blog post. It can be to go and listen to your latest podcast episode. It's telling them what to do next, because we can never assume that readers will know. And if you want to provide them with more information about your book, sending them to a specific page on your website so that they can discover more about the book and they can learn more about you and all that you offer.
And it's more than just, hey, go buy my book.
Yes.
It's providing them opportunities to dive deeper into your world, your universe, so that you're able to draw them in and give them even more of a reason to want to buy your book.
Exactly. And this is very important if you are like a guest on another person's podcast. If you do this great podcast interview, you want to send them someplace where they can stay in touch with you and where they can dive deeper. So maybe driving them to your free incentive to get them on your newsletter list, or telling them where you want them to go visit you on social media or to your website. Being intentional with where you want these new connections to go is key to making them take that next step.
All right, so that's step 3. What is step 4?
Step 4 is driving them to your newsletter. You'll hear me hammer this over and over again because it is that important. Your newsletter is where you send people to not only stay in touch with them, but it enables you to own that connection, meaning we don't own the connections that we have on social media. We need to always be moving people from social media or from the magazine that they're reading about you or wherever they're hanging out into your newsletter list, because you own those connections. And it enables you to continue to warm up the relationship, to continue to build that relationship, But most importantly, this is a group of people that are one step closer to buying. This is your core audience.
Right. And this is the place where you also provide the most value for those people that have gone as far as to give you their contact information.
Because liking or following you on social media or liking your post, that's no skin off their back.
Right.
That's nothing. So when they give you their email address, that's the first transaction that you're having with someone. That is the first give that your reader is taking part in.
Mm-hmm.
If they are willing to give you their email address,
that says a lot.
It does.
Yeah. All right. So we're at the final step now of the strategy. What is step 5?
Everybody's favorite is selling.
Aha.
This is where we sell. And I know I talk to so many authors who feel gross selling. You know, if you were to just walk up to someone on the street and say, hey, I have a book for sale. Do you want to buy it? Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah.
But because you've been intentional with leading them through this strategy, asking people for a sale who are A, already attentive, B, who are interested, and C, are ready to buy, it's not gross.
It makes it a lot easier.
It makes it so much easier. I always tell authors that it is so much easier to sell to people who are already paying attention. And so if you were to, let's say, go on social media and try to sell right there.
Which I see a lot of people trying to do.
Yes. And I want to go give them a hug and say, oh, honey, no.
Step back for a minute.
Yes. It's something that takes ushering them through a process, because putting yourself in their shoes and asking yourself, would I like it if someone just came right up and told me to buy something when I wasn't ready? No.
Don't even know who the person is.
Exactly. Yeah. Even though you're ready to sell, even though you're ready for them to buy and you're anxious for them to buy, does that mean that they are ready? So the selling part, when you follow this process, it makes selling so much easier and so much more effective.
All right, so let's recap these 5 steps. And if you haven't been taking notes, that's okay, because
I have a brand new free download that you can get called the Book Marketing Blueprint. And it really outlines everything that we've talked about today. And it's going to help you to actually take the steps that you need to take to start your strategy. So it's all there.
And it's in the episode notes for this episode, or you can go to mixedustmedia.com/blueprint to download it right now. But let's go ahead and just audibly recap these 5 steps for the sake of this conversation. So the first step in your strategy was awareness. The second step was your content. The third step was your call to action. The fourth step was your newsletter. Then that 5th step finally is selling. So making sure that you have all of these pieces in place as a part of your strategy will make sure that by the time you get to that last step, that it is as easy as possible and your ideal reader is ready and willing to buy your next book. Okay, so we covered why the strategy is important, what you recommend the strategy be for authors. There's one more thing that we wanted to talk about before we let you go, and that is when authors should begin this process of implementing the strategy.
I always tell authors to start as soon as possible, because you don't want to be frantically throwing this together at the last minute.
Right.
Because it's not going to just automatically happen. You really have to nurture these connections. So even while you're still writing, you can begin to build that awareness. You can build those connections, and you can drive them to your content, and you can have a call to action. You can start building your newsletter list. So when your book does come out and you're ready to sell, you're going to have an attentive group of people there waiting. So even though you might feel that it's too far ahead, that you're not going to be selling or you're not going to be releasing your book anytime soon, that's okay, because you're going to be nurturing and building these connections.
And we understand that when you're in writing mode, it's hard to shift any of your focus or attention or your time away from that writing process. Authors work so hard and so long to get this book written and edited and revised and the artwork and all this stuff ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that book is complete, they think, oh, it's a month now before my book releases. Let me start thinking about my strategy now. Let me hire somebody. Let me find some advice to start implementing. And it's not too late at that point, but you're definitely setting yourself up for a more enjoyable journey if you begin that planning and strategy process as soon as possible, like you say.
Well, marketing, again, is not selling. It's connecting. When you're writing your book, you're connecting. It's not about selling.
Right.
And when you can spread this out over time, it's much more fluid. You're not frantically trying to make these connections all at the last minute. So even if you're just doing a little bit here and there while you're writing, continuing to post and to continue to make these connections, you're still doing a lot because it's spread out over time. You're not cramming it all into a month's worth of time. So starting as soon as possible is really important.
This is where that map analogy comes back and helps.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually a journey. And I know that can be kind of cliche and kind of cheesy to think of it that way. If you're able to visualize where you're going to end up and you think of these steps that you've laid out in that strategy as not destinations in and of themselves. You have the ultimate destination of selling the book, but then these 5 steps are those places that you're aiming towards along the way. So that newsletter is something that you're gathering people up to take with you and end up there so that by the time you get to the end place, they are ready to put their money down and spend the time reading your book.
Exactly.
So all that to say, strategy is more than a buzzword.
Yes.
Very important. And you know what? We've already given you the Make It Happen moment.
Yes. Download the free book marketing blueprint. It's going to really help you to make your strategy come to life and to help you plan out your own personal strategy for your book.
So head on over to the show notes for this episode, or you can head to mixedismedia.com/blueprint and start implementing your strategy right now.
And thank you so much for listening.
We'll see you next time.